Hi, and welcome back to The Road Leads Back to Me. I'm Coral Seco. I also want to welcome you today to our first council meeting. You're probably wondering, what is this council meeting? I came on to listen to a podcast. Well, if you're listening, you're a council member. You're one of my council members. And the reason I wanted to create this community was to have a space where we are all just trying to authentically get to the highest version of ourselves, the real, true nature of girlhood, and just humanhood. It may be at that, because there might be people that aren't women listening and joining today. And how important it is to have a council. So when I think of a council and this council meeting, I think of people who I trust, people whose story, when I think of it and really apply it, kind of like thinking as evidenced by what? Like if I'm asking this person for advice, for example, or a question on just trying to process, like, hey, this weird thing happened. Is this someone who, when I'm talking to them, I should listen to them? Because they live in alignment to their values. They live in congruency to who they are. I know that they are good in their nature and they're really honest people. And unfortunately, that's not everybody. So here we are gonna have what is called the council. And as a council member, this is a safe space where you can ask questions and we can all collectively join in on our stories and learn about each other and learn about ourselves through said stories. So welcome to our first council meeting. So you're probably wondering, how do I get to pick who's my council member? You have probably had the same group of friends throughout your life and have maybe even allowed and just kind of said, this is who this person is. Like, we're just going to accept them for who they are, but maybe they've been rude to you, maybe they've bullied you, maybe they have frankly fragmented you and made you feel less than. That's not a council member. We could hold space for someone's lived experience and what has turned them into who they are today, but that doesn't mean we have to enable any sort of negative behavior. A council member is someone who lives in alignment with their values. You know who they are, good day, bad day, that is who they are, point blank, period. And how do we know when to ask for this, right? Because throughout life, and especially and respectfully, through Instagram and social media, we all have this like persona that we have to be perfect and we have to be this and we have to be that. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. Whoever says that they post whatever is a liar. I'm sorry, respectfully. But the council member is someone that when something is happening and you're like, I don't know if I'm being gaslit. I know what the truth of this is, and this person is just not taking accountability. You clock it. So something I came up with my clients with in therapy actively is what I have dubbed the orange flag theory. Now, the orange flag theory is when something happens that is not necessarily a red flag, but it's something that's a felt sense like, oof, I didn't like that. There was something about the tone, there was something about the way that they said it that seemed like it was a backhanded comment. Like, what was that about? If you're left feeling like that from a council member, heavy on the air quotes, you need to clock it. And the reason that you need to clock it is because anybody that you have what us therapists call secure attachment with is going to accept you and understand like, hey, this occurred and I just kind of want to talk to you about it. Like, what came up here? If they are just listening to defend and not listening to hear, you need to clock it. That's not a secure attachment. That is not a secure person. And that's also not your council member. Another way that I would, clock someone who, whether they should be or vet, right? Should they be in my council? Should they not be in my council? Would be if you feel like everything you say to them is going to be repeated. There is something about that if you are entrusting someone with such a secret, and such a story that brings you whatever emotional word you can label it, that they're going to go ahead and tell your story, that's not a safe person. That's not a council member. That's not someone that has your best interest in mind. Now, it's one thing if someone's being, maybe it's the opposite, right? Where you're the council member and you're feeling like your friend is being abused, your family member is being abused, and you reach out to someone like, hey, I gotta talk to you. Do you think that was weird, right? Like, what was that about? You doing that is not talking shit. It's not talking bad. It's just like, hey, we love this person, and how do we help them navigate this? And that's really uncomfortable, especially like no one wants to lose a friend and no one wants to lose someone who they feel is in their counsel. And when that occurs, you need to clock it and be like, wow, if we can't even talk about it, then that lived experience or that felt sense is likely true. And what do we do with our friend? How do we navigate this? So that's another way that I would suggest if you're trying to figure out like who is my council member. Just because you've known someone for a very long time does not mean that they may have the best intentions for you. There could also, in that lived experience of you guys, have lived through many different phases of who you are. And like a metamorphosis, right? Of who you were today is not who you were in 2015, right? It's 2025 now. And when you think about that, that's important to know, because you need to evolve. That is the point of humanity. It's not to stay the same, it's to evolve. And sometimes evolving means meeting new people that may have better intentions for you than someone that's known you for a very long time. And that's uncomfortable, but it's also okay. Because when you have your people around you, it's a you rise, I rise. And when you have people that love you and want to support you, they're going to champion you no matter what. And they'll hold space for it and be like, hey, we're gonna talk about that, but we're gonna hold space for it. That's a council member, holding space for you in your humanity and in who you are. So when do we relieve someone of their duties as a council member? Hard thing to say and a very personal choice. But I'll use myself as an example and how I have relieved some people and some of my council members that just respectfully weren't in alignment with me. And I'm going to use, again, the orange flag theory and the red flag theory. So this is how I do it. I clock things very, very quickly. And while I may not say something in the moment, I'll clock it. I note it down in my, literally, I have a notes like, this happened today. And I journal because I'm a therapist, duh. So I'll reflect on it and be like, this made me feel this way. Labeling also your emotional words. When you think about that memory and the way that that person makes you feel, what emotional words come up for you? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel annoyed? Do you feel angry? If those are words, all right, that's a felt sense that we have to acknowledge, and an orange flag. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time, orange flag. And while we can hold space for humanity and their humanity and lived experience, you also need to clock patterns. Because if you continue to just, this is who they are, this is just who they are, and I don't know what else to say to you there. Okay, well, the two things could be true. That is who they are, and they're also abusive, likely. And that doesn't make you feel well. Maybe they don't have to be abusive, but that doesn't make you feel well. And you need to acknowledge that. The way I do it is I clock 2 things, orange flags. With my clients, I tell them do 3. And 3 orange flags equal 1 red flag. And we have a 2 red flag system around here. 2 red flags, they're out. I used to do 3 strikes, you're out, but that would mean 6 orange flags, which you could do that if you want. You need to see what feels right to you. And also ask yourself, what is the programming you have around letting go of a relationship that isn't serving you? And it's not to say that someone has to have a purpose in your life and that you need to use them and they need to serve you. No, not in that literal sense, but in the sense that if you're talking to someone and every time that they go to say something to you, it's a backhanded comment, it's passive aggressive, it's mean, it's rude, it's putting you down, it's low vibrational, they're an anchor. And you cannot you cannot go carrying around this weight around in the world because of a programming that you learned growing up that isn't serving you. Frankly, that's how whenever I think of how to let go or have someone resign from a council member position, I do that. And, I always think of, there's one example that comes to mind. Like, I'm very cutthroat, Edward Scissorhands style. Like, you do something, I'm like, all right, I'm going to collect that and note that down, keep it there, okay. And I'll never forget, I had a conversation with someone and they started making these like backhanded comments. Like I think I asked them about I forgot. I asked them about an accountant, and when I asked them about the accountant, they were like, "Well, the person I see is a poor people accountant." And I was like, "Why? Why would I want to go see someone who poorly finances or manages their finances or the finances? Like that doesn't make any sense to me." And at that point, thankfully, I was able to get in contact with my accountant at the time, but he was just very busy, and I was like, "Please help!" And he was like, "No, actually, I could squeeze you in here." But it was one of those things of like just asking a girlfriend, like, "Hey, who's your accountant?" And that was the response, instead of just being like, "Oh, girl, here's my accountant." Like, "Oh, it's not a poor person accountant. This is someone who comparatively just stayed back," and that's a choice, and that's them. But if you're trying to rise and be the highest version of you, you may have to leave people behind, and that's okay. And understand that that's just part of it. They're still part of your story. They were just a character that didn't make it to the next chapter. And if you look at it like that, that's an easier way of resigning them as a council member. So before we wrap up today, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the importance, again, and really put that in, of your council. Your council are the people that, when you are trying to achieve a dream, are championing you, and they're believing in you and encouraging you, and not projecting their own stuff and their own fears onto you. Your council should be people that, when they talk about you, talk great about you, and hold space for your humanity, and hold space for who you are. Because who you are and the road that led you to where you are today is your story, and there's nothing more powerful than owning the story of you. So your council members are very important people throughout that journey of life. So thank you so much for joining today, and please make sure to follow on all social media and stay tuned for next week's episode.